Reginald here. As you know, I always add a little something special to my videos. They're not just like every other easy guide out on the internet, and this is no different. Today, I am going to be talking to you about several builds you can use in Havoc 40, but I'm also going to be talking to you about ideal team compositions for clearing high-level Havocs in the current edition of Havoc. Now let's kick things off in an exciting way with the let's make that 5 most evil builds that you can run for a Havoc 40 game. These are the normal meta builds for each class. So if you want to know what's basically considered meta and what team composition is meta, this is your spot. First up, the Veteran. I'm just going to put it on screen for you to make this easy. Additionally, you're going to be running a dueling sword, a plasma gun, and shredder grenades as your blitz to maximize there. This is a shout with over toughness and weapon specialist type build. For Zealot, you're going to be running a chorus crit build, synergizing to spend lots of crits getting books with a blazing piety keystone, and you're going to be running a flamer to help with horde clear when you're in between books. For the second Zealot in this composition, we're going to be using a second chorus Zealot with dueling sword, crit spam, blazing piety, but we're going to be using a bolter instead of a flamer, and the intent here is just to provide additional control when large mass groups show up. Next, we're going to be running a Psyker. The Psyker is going to be running bubble, dueling sword, and Inferno staff, the fire staff. Again, the point here is we're going to be really focusing on outputting as much fire damage as possible, screen clearing as much as possible, and providing safety from incoming shooting attacks. This is the default team composition if you are looking to maximize your win rate when doing Havoc clears. And it works pretty well for that. However, we do have a new contender for one of the chorus slots, and that's Ogryn. When it comes to control, solid team buffs, and just demolishing the screen in front of you, Ogryn is really putting out a lot these days, and a Rumbler with a taunt Ogryn build like this one is pretty much one of the most evil things on the battlefield right now. It's downright ludicrous how much output you can have while also having insane survivability and team utility. So I think this is a real contender to replace that Bolter Zealot. Now, that was the default norm for previous Havoc, and that was what most people would want run when running pubs. Though I was never of the opinion that it was the absolute best possible composition for a competent team, it was certainly the best composition for a less experienced team. Let's talk a little bit about what the new meta is and what the new system is. All of those builds are still just downright evil, so if you are looking for something to maximize your own personal input, that would be a good place to start. However, I want to look at the team-based comms coordinated avenue for how this game can be played. So let's talk about team compositions. What are the core sets of problems you're going to be facing in a Havoc game? Well, primarily these are broken out into basically 4 camps in my opinion. You're going to be dealing with large hordes of chaff enemies which are designed to gum you up, slow you down, and make you vulnerable to more specialized enemies. You are going to be dealing with waves of dangerous specialists mixed in with those hordes. You're going to be dealing with elite mobs, which can include large numbers of gunners, reapers, bulwarks, crushers, ragers, you name it, all mixed together in different compositions, though the most common are somewhat 1-to-1 ratios of large volumes of reapers and gunners, or large volumes of crushers, bulwarks, and ragers. There's also that one comp that has shotgunners, but I feel like that's pretty free, generally speaking, and not really worth commenting on. Then, if all of that wasn't enough to keep things interesting, you're also going to have to deal with monstrous specialists, captain and lieutenant spawns, as well as normal, more frequent monster spawns. That's a lot of stuff to worry about in any given team composition, so how are you going to handle it, and what is the best composition to actually beat the game with? Well, that's going to always be a subject for debate, and the objective of Darktide is actually to have fun while playing it, so different builds, different team comps can lend a lot of creativity, but we do want to sort of talk about some common solutions that are out there already. So I'm going to define 4 roles for you. And these are really the progeny of the work that I have been doing alongside JSAT and Combine and Amarist and a few others like Presto, who have been trying to figure out the best ways to handle Havoc at a high level. Now, I'm not saying this is directly taken from them, but rather this is some of the work that I've sort of been thinking about myself as a way to solve the problem. But it's definitely inspired by the work that they've put in already. So I think they'll be familiar with what I'm proposing here if they catch this video. So the way I see it, there are 4 actual roles to take care of. There is a stability role, there is a horde clear and tempo role, there is a sniping role, and there is a role for boss busting. So the reason I think these are really important, and they can be mixed and matched, but I think you have to have them covered through the 4 players that are allowed on your team, through the kits they take and the abilities they take. So exactly how you mix and match these roles, they can even be multiple roles on the same person is fine. There can be overlap, that's all fine. But the point I'm saying is you really have to think about these things holistically in your team comp. So for example, let's say you need someone to fill in the role of stability, right? That's the first role I listed. It's very important. Stability would be something like Shout, voice of command, right? The yellow toughness provides a big stagger AoE, provides stability and safety for the team to operate. Bubble Psyker with the trauma staff provides stability through a combination of preventing ranged damage, providing toughness to the team, and knocking over big threats. Rumbler Ogryn with taunt and push taunt and stagger on push and all these dodge capacities that Ogryn now has with a lot of toughness and stuff like that, running a shield or something and a rumbler. That would provide a lot of stability to a team as well, providing additional support to that team and preventing them from being overrun, but when large walls of mass come your way. Another good option there would be a Chorus Zealot. Chorus lasts a long time, provides stagger and suppression in a large radius, provides over toughness, and the ability to overall defend the player and provide safety. So these are all ways that you can generate safety and generate stability in a composition. And the reason you would want something like this, let's say you run a game and you lose a game. And the way you lose that game is you get overrun, like just a wall of bulwarks come your way, a wall of crushers, you get run down by a bunch of ragers and you're like, wow, we fell over as soon as it mattered. Well, that's because you lacked stability. You needed some utility options that could be knocking things over, staggering things, preventing yourselves from being overrun, allowing you to hold and take that space and prevent the enemy from crushing you underfoot. Okay, so that's what stability characters and stability abilities are for. I think they're really important and they represent role 1. So think about how you can bring that to your team. You should have at least one person whose primary kit is dedicated to that role, but then everybody else can do a little bit of it, right? Now, the second role I listed was sort of horde clear. Why am I talking about horde clear? I mean, everybody can do that, right? You just swing your melee weapon, no problem. The thing of it is, some melee weapons are way better at this than other melee weapons. A heavy sword on a zealot is way faster than like a thunderhammer. And the speed at which you're able to clear through a horde does matter for your ability to progress. And it also helps you cut away chaff when you're trying to deal with elite mobs. So having someone who's at least bringing a dedicated weapon and a kit that provides them with the ability to engage with that weapon and deploy it aggressively is really important. So it can be a power sword on your veteran with weapon specialist. It can be a heavy sword on your zealot. It can be your psyker running a great sword this time and using the moonblade shot. Whatever it needs to be, you need to have that considered for 1, 2, or 3 people. Someone needs to be doing that work. Flamer is very popular for this role because it can also burn down bulwarks and stuff. So that's why it's popular. The Rumbler is also really good for this. We're not going to talk about meta and off meta or evil weapons just yet, so hold on to that. Now, I did mention tempo, and what do I mean by tempo? Tempo is about keeping up the pace of forward movement. It's really bad if you get stuck and are stuck in a horde swarm so long that another one spawns. So when I'm talking about tempo, really what I mean is clear speed, and it's about being able to kill everything and progress without getting stuck. And that's why horde clear is actually important in Havoc, even though nobody wants to talk about it. Okay, next up, we need to look at sniping. Now, one of the problems in Havoc is even though they said they were going to and said they were supposed to be nerfing the spawn rates of gunners, shotgunners, elite reaper mobs, all that kind of stuff, it doesn't seem like that really happened in my experience. So there's still a huge problem when you have large numbers of shooters and gunners on the field and you don't have good ways to aggress into that group in melee or whatever it is you need to do to get rid of them. So, considering that plus waves of heavy specialists coming in, like just heavy waves of like muties and trappers and whatever else, it can be really important to have a solution to that problem as well. Now that could be a mixed solution from the whole team, bringing decent ranged weapons that can flex into that role, or it could be a dedicated option. The best of course would be an executioner's stance veteran with something like focus target, and that can provide utility to the whole team and also the ability to take out lots of different elites. Running a plasma gun, running a Lucius las gun, something like that can work. I'm going to get specific about the builds later. The last thing you want for role selection is a boss buster. I think this is incredibly important, and I keep seeing people talk about their losses online, and no one's really talking about the fact that they're not bringing boss busters on their team. If you look at the evil meta build comp, one of the things that stands out in that composition is a lack of serious boss damage. The dueling sword is pretty good into bosses, but with the composition that is built, it's not that good. There are 2 Chorus Zealots, no FOTS Zealot. Most of the boss damage on that dueling sword is missing. Bolter, very ammo hungry, not going to be great for multiple bosses. And we have monster specialists to deal with now. Flamer, same problem. You can have a plasma gun vet, but also ammo hungry and not the best boss damage either, and just okay damage from that dueling sword. The Flamer, same problem for the Psyker. That's not amazing boss damage, and if you're taking a dueling sword or if you're taking a Force Greatsword, you're probably still not doing that much boss damage. This is where having a dedicated boss buster is really important. There are a couple of builds that do this for each class reasonably well, and all of them are high risk to play. This is where it's going to be critical for your team to be chipping in. This is why stability picks are important. You need someone to stabilize your team composition, or 2 people to stabilize your team composition and provide safety, so that this 4th person can be greedy with their particular loadout to maximize her boss damage and lacking in survivability of it. The obvious best case for this is the Thunderhammer. It's really, really strong, and I'm going to play a build up for you. Okay, let's get some build discussion going now that we've sort of clarified why these different roles are so important. So I'm just going to do this very easily for you to make it simple. So here's my proposal for what I think the best possible team composition for the modern Havoc is. This is intended to maximize the success rate of a team, but it does have some skill floor requirements, and Havoc is hard, so don't expect to be winning all your Havocs regardless. You are welcome to mix and match things to suit your particular team. I suggest that strongly, and you're welcome to tweak these builds. Don't take my word as gospel, but I do believe that this is probably one of the best ways to run. So right now, I'm going to lead off with the boss busting role. I think you should run a Zealot with a Thunderhammer with one of these 2 builds. You're going to want to run the Crucius Hammer unless you're especially familiar with the Iron Helm, and I want to reiterate how important this is. I keep reading online about people who are like, I'm dying to big mobs of bosses, like 5 bosses spawned and we wiped. Well, this is the solution to that problem because it's about killing them quickly, right? You get 2 lieutenants, you can pop those lieutenants very quickly in just a couple of hits if your team is setting you up properly, okay? So what I'm going to want is a Crucius Thunderhammer, some ranged weapon, either that could be a bolt pistol, a las pistol, or a flamer. We're going to be taking one of these 2 builds, and we're going to be, our goal, our job for most of the game is to maximize our boss output. The team needs to play around that as a coordinated group to set you up for big hits. After that, you're going to be using your abilities to mostly help deal with big elites like Crushers, Maulers, Ragers, Squads, whatever. And then obviously you can deal with hordes to some degree, but more in a stability way than actually clear time. It's not the best clear time. Cool. But if you don't have a Zealot with a Thunderhammer, the next best option is probably an Ogryn running heavy hitter with a pickaxe. That's pretty solid too. Next pick for me would be Ogryn on a stability roll. This build, in my opinion, is probably one of Ogryn's stronger builds, but it's not the strongest possible build. The purpose of this build is to spread a sort of a safety net around your team. So we're going to be running Taunt, a Shield, which is lower output than some other options. You could certainly run a Pickaxe if you want instead. We're using the Block Push Taunt ability. We're going to be using No Pushover to shove things over. We're going to be dodging around to keep things stable. And we're going to be using the Rumbler to make space when we need to make space off the Rumbler. Rumbler is incredibly strong right now, probably OP, and could probably look at some nerfs. But with this talent tree, you're still going to be putting out a lot of stuff. If you want to not be playing so OP, then you should probably not take the Rumbler in this build and instead run something like a Heavy Stubber. It'll still be a very strong build. Your job here is to primarily focus on supporting your Thunderhammer user in boss slaying. You are able to take aggro with Taunt and grab captains or lieutenants and pull them away so that another one can be managed by the rest of your party. You can zone out large groups of enemies so that there's space for the Zealot to operate, and you can apply Skull Crusher stacks to things. So however you guys can coordinate and figure it out, that works. Our next slot is what I'm going to consider the sniping slot. This is going to be a veteran with Voice of Command and either Focus Target or Weapon Specialist. In this case, we're going to be building it with Weapon Specialist, and we're going to be building a Plasma Gun with a heavy sword if you want to be ethical, or a dueling sword if you want to be unethical. I think the heavy sword on veteran is incredibly nice and really provides horde clear to himself with weapon specialist on the team, and good safety and utility for just keeping himself alive in messy fights is actually quite a bit nicer to use than the dueling sword, aside from the kiting domain. So you can be a little bit more bold into hordes and don't have to run away as much. However, an alternative build if you want to fill that sniping role, and I think you have to understand that voice of command is really strong and provides a lot of stability, and it's basically his only viable ability unless you're running a really tight team comp with really good players. But an alternative, if you're feeling spicy today, is to run an executioner's build with focus target and a Lucius Lasgun. I have seen this run by very skilled players, and it feels great when all the Reapers are falling over dead very quickly and all the specialists are dying, because that's working. The heavy sword provides that good safety in melee where necessary, and otherwise the Lucius Lasgun is your primary weapon and tool, but the rest of your team has to be playing well to support you, because you are essentially a second greed slot here and you're not providing stability with voice of command. So again, the first set of builds that I'm providing here are better and are going to provide more safety and utility for you and your team, and still provide that sniping capacity. So just keep that in mind when you're making up your team comp. This is more of a high skill selection if you're looking to spice things up. Lastly, we're going to be focusing on primary utility, which is going to be a bubble psyker with a trauma staff, not a flamethrower. Why a trauma staff instead of a flamethrower? Well, we've got plenty of horde clear between Ogryn's ability to control everything and bleed it all down and kill them all with this build and drop rumbler shots. The Zealot is fine, especially if he's running a flavor. It won't be a big deal, and you might want to consider a flamer very seriously in this case. The veteran is going to be doing fine, and then lastly, Trauma's decent into hordes too because it has infinite cleave. Bubble is going to keep the team safe, and you're going to be able to blow your way through most threats this way. You're welcome to take a Inferno staff instead if you prefer that, or feel that it's necessary in your comp or your team comp when you're working out your roles with the team. Okay. I think I've gone through this pretty effectively. I've shown you the builds without spending an age on each one, and I've sort of explained the intended role composition of what I think the ideal team is in a Havoc 40 as opposed to what used to be the meta. I've also described what the old meta was and why I think it's weaker than something like this, specifically because of the problems that you run into in modern Havoc. You need to take out multiple different difficult targets at once, oftentimes pulling aggro in one direction or another, and that's where Ogryn could be really handy with taunt, and also is very survivable and useful in a team. The Zealot is going to be providing that overheaded damage, hitting for big on big monsters. However, if you need to, you can replace that Zealot with another Ogryn running a heavy hitter build with a pickaxe, and that should about do it. Warm regards, everybody.
Reginald.
I would like to take a moment to express my genuine and significant gratitude to Bonehead for becoming my first Oath Taker level member. Your support really does mean a lot to me and has made it so much easier for me to continue to justify the amount of effort I pour into this channel. I'd also like to thank Miles Williams Lewis, Joseph Davison, Shackleford, and McSpan for supporting my channel through my Adept level membership. Your atypical support really means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. I'd also like to extend a thank you to the rest of my members. The support helps the channel a lot. If you would like to become a member of this channel, there is a link in the description below and a join button next to the subscribe button. Thank you all so much for visiting. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.